Hey, Rizuan.
Hello, Nathan. How are things?
Good. Excited to do student spotlight with you. I know you're going to have a lot of interesting things to say. So
A lot of stuff to talk about from experience, yeah.
I think you're going to be the second out of 3 people so far that we've recorded who's from Singapore. So Singapore is definitely representing in these student spotlights so far. So, okay, let's jump in. Can you talk to us a little bit about who you are and where you were before you discovered Clay and Clay Bootcamp?
My name's Rizuan, and I've been in sales and marketing for about 4 years now. So I think it was in 2023 when I joined as an SDR. So that was my first proper exposure into sales. And it was earlier that year that I first heard about Clay. People were talking about it, but, didn't really delve too much into it at the time.
Mhm.
After my SDR role at a fintech company, a fintech startup based here in Singapore. That was when I started to venture into properly doing my own thing. I was actually doing like another cold outbound agency before I started the SDR role.
Mhm.
But, because of how people were doing outbound back then, didn't really take off really well. And then after I left that role, I thought, hey, you know what? I know a bit more now, and I'm a bit more prepared to try something else again. So that was when I started to get into Clay, go-to-market engineering, seeing this space, people talking about it. And then now I'm running my own workflow automation agency. It's called Rice Labs. And, apart from just doing things myself, I'm also partnering with some other people as their technical automation partner of sorts. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's where I am right now.
Nice. And what made you decide to join Clay Bootcamp?
At the time, I think this was in late 2024 when I started seeing Clay pop up more often on LinkedIn. And, when I actually started going into it to see what it was capable of doing, what people were actually doing with it, and also seeing how people were sort of building successful agencies and businesses around it, it gave me the inspiration to try something out myself in that space. And so I was going at it by myself for a while. I was reaching out to friends saying like, hey, I've learned about this tool. I want to build a business around it. Could I do this for you for free? I just want to get experience and stuff. So yeah, I was doing things for free for a while, doing my own sort of work. And then I think it was late 2024. So like, towards the end of the year that Clay Bootcamp popped up on my radar because they were talking about their Clay Bootcamp scholarship. That's the one. Yeah. And I think there were 2 slots. So I applied for that because, I applied for that as well because I was looking at the company's, your website. I was looking at the kind of case studies you had, the kind of success stories. I was particularly interested, not just by the ability to, learn Clay from a technical perspective, but also use that skill and turn it into, profit, basically, commercialize
Right.
it. So yeah, so that was what drew me to the program. So I applied. I didn't get it, unfortunately. But then I think it was we had a chat after that. You recommended me to come on to the program, basically. So yeah, I thought I did some thinking. And I thought, you know what? I think I saw a line on the website somewhere that said, one good client can pay for the cost of the program easily. And I thought the same thing too. I figured, you know what? If I can get to the point that I'm trying to get to, which is, start making money in the shortest time possible and then easily cover the cost of the program and do it a lot faster than I could on my own. I figured, why not, but I gave it a shot. So yeah, we had a chat, joined a program, and I think it's been like 4 or 5 months now, but yeah, I've learned a lot from the people inside, gotten my first few clients from there, which I think we'll talk about eventually. But yeah, that's what got me into it.
Nice. Thank you for the background. What surprised you the most when you joined?
The biggest thing really is just how helpful, how transparent the people in this community are when it comes to, helping, giving advice, sharing tips and tricks. So I've actually been part of a similar community, right? And this is not really focused on Clay. Like this was a sort of lead gen bro community, one of those. But when I was part of that community, people were not as open and transparent about sharing insights, about helping others, basically. One example that I can think of, which it still sticks in my head, two people, right, in this community, A and B. So A asked B what tools that B was using to personalize outreach at scale, right? Because at the time, it was a relatively new concept. People then were still used to the idea of generic emails sent to, tens of thousands of people, right? But now that B was sort of doing personalized outreach at scale, people were starting to question like, hey, what tool are you using? Like, could you tell me? And B, I still remember these words. He said, not going to share the name, but you can look it up. It's pretty popular right now, something to that tune. And I thought that was really stupid. Like, really? Is this what a community is supposed to be? We gatekeep things now. But yeah, I didn't really like that very much. And so when I came into this community, right, which was not exactly cold outbound focused, it was clay focused, but a lot of clay at the time was still about clay outbound, cold outbound and stuff. I was surprised. It was, people were really open to sharing, to sharing advice, to helping others. And it's not just one or two sentence answers, but they were giving sort of full sort of detailed step-by-steps on, okay, you want to do this, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and so on. And with no expectation in return, right? Or no expectation or whatever in return. So I think that was one of the biggest things, yeah. Because it's sort of a new thing to me when I went to join communities and see people be so helpful.
I see. That's nice to hear. And yeah, I think the clay ecosystem in general is probably more friendly than and open than average.
It is,
thankfully. Yeah. It's a nice place. Like you combine that, compare that with Go High Level, which I've seen you have an allergic reaction to when I even mention it. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like a non-scammy, like a very giving community. And we'll get the GHL mafia coming after us or something.
Oh no.
With as far as collaborating with people, is that mostly in Slack? Are you jumping on calls with people? Like where are those interactions happening usually?
Normally, I'd say those. Well, they're kind of happening everywhere. So in terms of face-to-face, I do go to quite a bit of face-to-face events here in Singapore, because we do have some clay meetups and all. So there are interactions there where, people will be asking for help on things. I'll be sharing what I know, and then vice versa, right? I'll be talking to other agency owners, for example, to learn about how they are doing things, what's working for them, and then sort of learning from them. Slack chats as well, because I think just naturally when it comes to communities like these, when you share things that when you jump on calls, people know you, so long as they know you on a first name basis, I think you can sort of expect messages like these to come in every now and then and be like, hey, you were talking about this, thanks so much, could we connect? And then yeah, sure, I'll connect. In fact, and not just that as well, but even on LinkedIn, when you're at least decently active in this space, people do reach out through DMs, connect requests, and then they will want to talk a little bit more about how are things going for you, and then just share how things are going for them, and then just find out how we could potentially work together, for example, or we could talk about things to look out for in this space, for example. So yeah, they happen all over the place. And I think just in general, when you are at least decently active, you realize that conversations happen everywhere. Ultimately, it sort of boils down to which ones you want to be a part of, which ones you want to, spend time on, because it gets tiring to be part of every one of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Speaking of being active on LinkedIn, I think one of the other Clay Bootcamp students scoped you out. I think he said, do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, I have my eye on Rizuan. He's been making some good posts. And I guess you ended up partnering with
a guy, Abhinandan, that's his name. He did reach out. And so his expertise specifically is within SaaS partnerships, right? So, if we look at SaaS sales as a whole, there's different functions within sales. You have inbound, outbound, partnerships, that's another team within sales. So his expertise has been 7 to 8 years at this time within SaaS partnerships, right? And right now he's a director of partnerships. So, he knows the full scope of what it's like to run partnerships, manage partnerships, and build partnership programs and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So he, from all this content, I think he saw that there was a potential for us to work together. Mm-hmm. One of the things that he noticed was that, I think just in general, and I think it's something that people can quite easily pick up on as well. When you look at people, the kind of content that people put out within this space, you'll notice that a lot of it is geared towards outbound sales specifically, right? A lot of it is very outbound focused, cold emails, cold calls, cold DMs, whatever it is. But not a lot of it is focused on the other teams within sales, right? Because partnerships brings in just as much, if not more revenue sometimes than cold outbound teams do. But they don't get as much love and support when it comes to, like tools or even team members to support them. Like, for example, let's say RevOps, but focused specifically for partnership teams. Okay, so just thinking from that scope of mind. So when he reached out, he was thinking that, hey, is there a way that, you and I, we could work together to build this, right? Build very automation and workflow specific stuff, but focused on partnership teams, because there's so much that they need to do, right? It's not like partnership teams are having a much easier time than Collaborators people do. If anything, they have a much harder time because they don't get as much support, right? They have their quotas, they have their revenue targets, but they don't get as much support. And so he thought, is there a way that we could work together to focus on these teams? And yeah, at the time I thought it sounds like a great fit, because I've not really been in partnerships, but I've been exposed to the kind of work that they do. I used to work quite closely with partnership teams when I was at my SDR role. And I thought, yeah, why not? It's a niche that we identified. It's not something that is really popular or like people really know much about. But the kind of work that, the kind of value that we could provide, when we combine our knowledge, our resources together, would be immensely helpful for them. And so we thought there's real value here.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And and right now, at the point of recording this, we are still building it up. We are talking to some potential first clients, exploring how this could work with them, still getting those initial conversations in. But based on what we've found out so far, people are interested, and we are curious to see where this goes.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit more about those types of things in a bit. Let's talk about what's a win that you're proud of that might inspire others who are interested in starting a clay agency or something related.
I think the biggest win that comes to mind is, well, it's two things actually. I think the first one is realizing the kind of work that I don't like to do and the kind of work that I like to do. And I think this is really important, but I'll explain why in a bit. So that's number one. And then number two is actually finding clients for the kind of work that I enjoy doing, which I think is just a dream for anyone, right? Something that you like doing, you find people who are willing to pay you for it. So those are the two big wins. The first one, realizing what I didn't like to do and what I like to do. So when I came into this whole space, I thought that I would end up doing cold outbound related stuff, right? Because number one, that's what everyone was just talking about at the time. And I think when we think about clay, people are immediately thinking about, okay, personalizing outreach at scale. Like that was sort of the connection that people drew at the time. And so, yeah, I thought, if I'm coming into this space, this is probably what I'd be doing. And it made a lot of sense for me at the time, because I just came from an SDR role. So I was writing cold emails basically every day, doing cold calls, cold LinkedIn DMs, like the experience and what people are talking about, they had that connection. And so I thought that's probably what I'd be doing. But, so earlier I mentioned that I was doing some free work for some of my friends who were, directors of BD and business owners themselves. Through that work, I realized that I don't actually enjoy it very much. And this is an important realization. I think sometimes people realize they don't like to do something, but then they just keep on pushing through it. I realized really quickly that I didn't really enjoy doing that stuff. But what I did enjoy doing was building automations, even though at the time I was just building it for myself. I was building content automation workflows or lead enrichment workflows for myself. I actually enjoyed doing that work a lot. Like I could sit there for hours on end just building it out, and it'd be like a flow kind of thing, where I'd sit down, get into flow, build that, and suddenly 3 hours pass by. And I was happy to do that. Yeah. So I realized that I didn't enjoy doing cold outbound, but I enjoyed doing building automations. And so when I joined the Clay Bootcamp, I shared about the kind of automations I built for myself on the office hours calls, I remember. And then I think it was then that you reached out to me, and then you're like, hey, this is really interesting. I think that you could potentially build some automations for Clay Bootcamp itself, so would you be cool to go on a call and then we could talk about how to work together and stuff. And I think that was sort of like the light bulb moment for me, because at the time everybody was just talking about cold outbound, but it didn't really click in my head that people would be willing to pay for good quality, really resilient automations built for their teams, right? And then when you reached out, I was like, oh, wait a minute. People do actually have interest in this. People do actually want to pay for this. And so I think that was the second win, where I realized that there were people who basically there was a market for this, right? And ever since then, I've had a few more other clients who were happy to pay me for specifically this kind of work, building automations for them. Like they were happy to pay me for it. And and even then, right now, I'm operating also as like a automation partner for another agency. So that's a really big win for me. And I think those are the two big wins that I've had ever since I joined the bootcamp. Yeah.
Yeah. Discovering what you don't like and what you do like, and then realizing, there's a path forward. That's big. Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Are you able to say your automation partner?
His name is Spencer Tahil, actually. Like he's really active in the bootcamp community. He shares a lot about. Yeah, exactly. Like his prompts are insane. I think everyone has seen it so far. Like his prompts are insane. But yeah, so I am right now. I'm operating as sort of his automation partner, because he focuses on one part of the business, and then when it comes to the more sort of technical implementation sort of stuff, that's when I take over. Yeah, so that's how we are. I guess partnering on stuff right now.
Nice. What's a challenge that you came across in this whole journey of, starting to make money with something that you really enjoy, and how did you overcome it?
The one that definitely comes to mind, which is something that I just recently managed to sort of resolve in a way, was that when I realized that, this is something that I can make money from, I started to say yes to pretty much everything. So someone asked me, hey, could we work on this together? I say, yeah, sure. Someone else asked me, hey, could we work on this project together? I say, yeah, definitely. Why the hell not? And then, someone else reached out and say, yeah, sure, let's do it. I got to a point where, okay, I realized that there was a market for this. And then I got into that momentum. I started saying yes to everyone. And then it got to a point where I realized that because I said yes to too many people in too short a period of time, number one, I wasn't getting enough sleep. It got to a point where I just wasn't taking care of myself well enough. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't able to set aside enough time every day to do self-care, go exercise, go for a walk, things like that. Every minute of my day, I was just thinking, okay, I need to be doing some sort of work for this person, and then that person, and then this person, that person. And so that was the challenge, where when you get very excited and then you realize, okay, when things are really starting to click, you pick up the momentum, but then you just start saying yes too quickly, and then you take on too much load, and then you realize, okay, I'm going to have to start offloading things. Otherwise, I am going to crash, I'm going to crash real quick. So yeah, how I resolved that was, I really sat down. I took a piece of paper, actually. I remember I sat down by my dining table, took a piece of paper. I wrote down every single client I had, every single project I was working on. And I looked through every single one of them. And I thought, okay, which ones can I afford to let go? Which ones would, be able to lead me to something greater? And which ones are the ones that I can reasonably afford to take off my plate because I don't see much potential there. And so, I just struck out one by one, and then had a hard conversation. In fact, I actually had a client who I reached out to and said, I know we had this arrangement where I was doing cold outbound related stuff for you, but I've decided moving forward that I'm not going to continue doing that. And so it did involve a few difficult conversations here and there, but ultimately now I'm in a much healthier place mentally and physically. Yeah. So yeah, meaning I think that's a challenge where you get momentum, you take on too much in too short a period of time, and then you realize, okay, crap, I've taken on too much. And I gotta start letting go. Yeah. So if anyone's watching this, please, like I get the excitement. I really get the part where oh, okay, man, things are really starting to click. But be careful about taking on too much too soon, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this. I've written a couple LinkedIn posts about it recently, and I think you're not my only inspiration, but you're one of the definitely one of the.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking like Asher and sorry, not Asher. I was thinking So like Rizuan and there are a few other people. Yeah, Asher as well. Yeah, he also ran in the same thing, and some other people. Yeah. And I see this with high performers. Like I've not had any luck telling people ahead of time, look, you're going to run into this problem. You need to hit the brakes early. I think that like there's a point you have to experience like getting overwhelmed with too many things. And then the trick is like you have to pare it back soon and like do an exercise like you talked about. So I'm glad you're able to do that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree though. Like what you said, the part about what you said, you've got to experience it firsthand. And so I'd probably change that advice a little bit. If you want to take a lot of things, by all means go ahead, but just do it once, don't do it again and again. Like learn your lesson the first time. That's what I'd say.
Makes sense. Yeah. I'm glad you're in a better place. I'm sure your wife is happier with you now that you have a little bit more time. What have been your results so far with, clearly you have a lot of work coming in, but like what's that experience been like?
Wait, sorry, the question was about results, right? Is that what you?
Yeah, as my cat is screaming in the microphone. I mean, it's isn't for you. It's not for you. Okay. So
hello. Yeah. Well, just to give like a sort of summary of where I am right now. So I'm on my own. I'm running my workflow automation agency. I don't touch Collaborators related stuff. I mainly focus on the technical implementation side of building workflows, right? So anything that's custom, that requires quite a fair chunk of code involved, that's sort of where I step in to build automations for teams. So right now, my clients are mainly, with the exception of Clay Bootcamp, my clients are mostly agencies who want to operate in a sort of lean fashion, but they don't have the time, or they don't have the in-house resources to build automations in a way that allows them to scale up without friction, basically. Yeah. And then also I am operating, like I mentioned earlier, as a automation implementation partner to a few other agencies. So essentially the way it works is, they take on the client projects, they close the deals, but when they need someone who's a bit more sort of technically advanced in a way to build those sort of more custom automations, that's when they'll reach out to me, and then I'll build those things for their clients. And then the other thing also is I'm building up the partnership-focused workflow agency with Avi as well. So that's the thing that we're still building up. So that's the thing right now that is, at this point in time, it's quote unquote unpaid in a way because we're sort of, building it from the ground up. But that's the thing that I'm also just excited about because, yeah, I'm really excited to see where that one goes.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, even though you said no to a lot of things, it sounds like you have a lot of irons in the fire, or you're planting a lot of seeds, and they're. Yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
All right. So shout outs. Any shout outs you'd like to give?
There's two specifically that come to mind. The first one for sure would be the people who took a chance on me when I was just starting out, when I didn't have case studies, when I didn't have social proof. So it's a lot of people, clients, for example, or even people on LinkedIn who reached out asking me, hey, could you share this with me, for example? Like, I think in small and big ways, there have been a lot of people who decided to take a chance on me when I was unproven. And I have them to thank for sure, because they are the people who've allowed me to put myself out there. Not allowed me, but they've given me the chance to really put myself out there, build case studies, build proof, which ultimately is something that I'm going to leverage to bring in bigger clients or bigger opportunities, basically. So yeah, for sure, all the people who've taken a chance on me, clients, people on LinkedIn, all of them, people in the community as well. And then the second one would have to be my wife, who's in the other room behind me right now.
With a gun.
I wonder whether she's listening in right now. But yeah, she when she knew that I wanted to do my own thing, after I left my SDR role, not once did she pressure me into, trying to make money as quickly as possible. She gave me the space. She took care of the house. She gave me the space to build this thing up properly. She gave me the time to make long-term decisions, to give me the space actually to really think long-term for this agency. And every day she was asking me how things are going, and then just generally overall supportive. So not going to go into much into that because there's a ton of things that she's done. I couldn't cover them all here, but the support that she gave me overall was what allowed me to think long term for this, and it's what allowed me to build the proper foundations for what I have right now. So I couldn't give enough shout outs to her. But yeah, if she's listening, or if you're listening right now, my dear wife, thank you.
Nice. I love that. Okay, so 2 quick more questions. What's one thing that someone new to building a GTM engineering agency or a Clay agency should know that you wish you'd known ahead of time?
Oh, wow. I would say the biggest one is it's going to take a lot more time than you think in the beginning. And that is very, very normal, right? I think when I was building up my agency right now, I think I sort of knew that lesson. But back in 2023, when I was building up my very first one, I wanted to get clients my second week, right? My first or second week. And I think anyone now would know that that's impractical, right? So just in general, getting your first client or just getting your first opportunity is going to take longer than you expect, but that's very normal, right? If you need to do things like take on part-time jobs, for example, or just take on work that's very low paid so that you can sustain yourself and do the work that you need to do to build this up properly, whether it's like posting content or creating lead magnets or just in general, doing free work for other people. If you have to do that, do it, right? That's what I did late last year, late 2024, December, and then earlier this year as well. I was taking on a part-time job so that I could keep the lights on or at least pay my share of the bills while I was building this up. Do it. If you have to do it, do it. So that, it gives you the peace of mind to make long-term decisions as opposed to those you make from a place of desperation. Those are the worst decisions to make. So that's my advice, definitely.
I saw this firsthand with you where like you're doing some work for us and also doing, what was it? Can I say what kind of work? Yeah.
Basically, it was a call center job. Yeah, I was just calling delivery drivers nonstop every minute for like the whole day.
You said something like it's melting your brain, or I forget what you said, but
it was mind-numbing. I think that was the word I used. It was mind-numbing. It was easy to do, but because you just kept saying the same thing again and again, it just makes you feel. Okay, I don't want to say the word, but it numbs your brain so much because you're just doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think you took a smart approach though to like, you don't want to get desperate. I was like, Rizuan, it's like, how do we get you off this job so you can do more work for us? And it worked well. Yeah, it was a nice job that you could scale up and down, I think, relatively easily.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not like you need to do a 1 month notice for quitting or anything.
Yeah.
Anything else that, like, closing thoughts for anyone who's watching that might be useful for them?
From my own personal experience, the biggest thing I would want to say is don't underestimate the value of showing up to events or communities. Basically, just don't underestimate the value that you can get from just showing up to places, right? Whether those places are physical or virtual. Reason I say that is when I was just starting out my agency at the time, that was what I was doing, right? I was just going to physical events here in Singapore, even if they were sort of remotely related. I just, went ahead to show up. Virtual events where there were office hours, for example, or community events, sharings, whatever it is, whatever event there was, I was just showing up. I was just learning as much as I could, but also trying to build connections with people. And the reason why I say this is so important is because I think we are in a place right now where trust, showing up, building trust is really, really important. Like you can't get that sort of thing from sending cold email to people anymore. And because trust is so important, showing up to things like these makes it so much easier to build trust, right? Because you're not just, I think back then the playbook was like, okay, as a cold outbound agency, if you want to get business, you send cold emails as well, right? But if you do that, your name is just another email address to these people. They don't have that kind of level of trust with you. But right now, when you show up to events, physical or virtual, people can put a name to your face. They can put a personality to your name. And it makes it so much easier to build trust, which means that it's so much easier for you to get opportunities, help people get opportunities. Like, these are really important, and it comes from a place of trust. So yeah, that's my advice, definitely. If you can, show up. Like, showing up at the start is really important. Doesn't matter how you do it, but showing up.
I love that. So true. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rizuan, for talking with me and with us. And I'm sure people get a ton of value out of hearing your story.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me here. Really, really enjoyed being part of Bootcamp. Yeah, and really happy to be able to share all the things that I've learned and thought about over the past few months or so.